Hi, I'm Mitch,
And I'm Todd.
and we are the Grizzled Geeks. And today we're going to spoil the episode 5 of Legion.
Yes, we are. I will tell you right up front, so far my favorite episode.
Yeah, this one definitely starts off with a bang.
I
I did not mean that to go there.
did.
So, right off in the beginning, he's definitely a different character. So, Legion show on FX. We've been doing these spoilers for a little bit. He's a mutant set in the X-Men universe, and he's a little bit crazy. But yeah, so, or he's been troubled and been in and out of psych wards for a while, and they think it's just his powers. Although this time, maybe they're thinking that's not it.
Hey, are we broadcasting live on Twitch? Because it's not coming up live for me.
Yeah, I'm showing as it being up and playing.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No
I kept
worries.
hitting refresh and it just keeps saying offline. That's all.
Yeah, it sometimes it takes a little bit cached or whatever. But yep.
All right.
So anyway, the episode, I don't remember exactly where the episode starts off in this one. I know the first thing in my mind for the episode is when he starts when he goes to get his sister. Right? So last episode he says that he wants to go and get her. The woman who's running the sort of the safe house or institute or wherever it is that they're staying at. Also, she wants him to stay there, but she also wants him to stay there so that he can help her bring her husband back, who's been trapped out in the what they call that. I'm going all D&D.
The astral plane.
Yeah, I was going to say the ethereal plane, but astral plane is
Astral.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's stuck in the astral plane. It's kind of interesting when it kicks off. This is a whole different David. He comes back from the astral plane.
Oh,
Mr. Confident.
He's different, and so my son and I, when we were watching this one, we were thinking that it wasn't so much that it was David sort of driving his body, as maybe that was Lenny.
It seemed like it was way too confident to be David, but maybe going to the astral plane and getting out of the astral plane and then going to save the day as he did, maybe that just gave him the confidence that he was finally getting a handle on his power. Maybe, but probably not.
Although the way the episode ended, I'm not sure that's how that went. And so if you think about that, right, and you don't really think about it as the show's unfolding, he's just acting a little bit weird. If that's Lenny driving, then the whole I found a way for us to be together thing gets creepy.
Yes, who is having mind sex with Sydney? That's the disturbing question. Is it the big bloaty-eyed guy? Because when the infrared cameras were showing him walking down the halls, they portrayed him as the bloaty-eyed guy, the bloated man,
the
not as
yellow-eyed
David.
demon.
So was the yellow-eyed demon in charge the whole time? That's a scary thought.
The other thing I'm kind of wondering is, is the yellow-eyed demon and Lenny's character, are they actually different characters, or are they just different projections of the same character, the same entity? The same thing. We get in there. You find out that his dog King was a figment of his imagination, or maybe it's the beginnings of this consciousness, this thing that they call a parasite riding in his mind. So what's the best way to buddy up and get a young boy to trust you if you're this thing trying to get a better foothold in his mind? You project yourself as something that he wants to enjoy and to love and trust and to bring close to him. His loyal dog King.
Yeah, that's a really good key insight. Makes perfect sense. And I can't help but wonder if Benny is the
A parasite.
what is the bloated guy? Because he kind of physically sort of resembles him, in an exaggerated
little
sort
bit.
of way. So,
But did you notice the clothing? We got a better look at the clothing of the bloated guy, the yellow-eyed, bloated, melty man. And it kind of looks like he's wearing the same clothing that the angriest boy in the world is wearing, just tattered and shredded, all over the place.
yeah. Yeah, it also kind of looked like a dragon fruit to me. But I've been on a dragon fruit kick. Sorry.
Okay.
So, it was a good episode. The thing I liked about the episode is a lot happens in this episode without it being a lot of psychology and a lot of in the loony bin sort of stuff going on. It was most happening in real time. There's a lot of action from the beginning all the way through, and it's one of the things I haven't seen. That the patterns in the past have been a lot of weird scenery and weird things leading up to some action at the end, and then the show ends. So this one, there's stuff going on, through the whole show that's keeping my interest, and it's moving along much quicker. I loved the scenes with him going back to the to D3. Is that what it's called? Or DS3?
I believe yeah, D3 I think is what it's called.
D3, and you see he's finally unleashing his full power, and you're seeing these guys like melted into the pavement and stuff, and that was like really dark, but like wow,
But
finally
he's whimsical as he's doing it, which really in my mind says that that's not him running the show. That's more Lenny's behavior. Lenny is this upbeat, and it's always kind of a little bit manic, a little bit too happy, and he's almost dancing as he's going, and then he's like snap, snap, snap. They blow apart, and there's like a little guy on fire, and he's like dancing around, and he like taps with his foot to put out the little tiny fire, and then he walks in, and then he peeks around the corner, and then guys explode, and he's just having a good time.
It's like an evil leprechaun.
It is like an evil leprechaun.
Oh, the magically delicious.
Terrible movie, by the way. Warwick Davis, Leprechaun. Yeah. Anyway, we don't want to go there.
No. So the scenes with D3 were pretty awesome, and it's funny how the team starts coming around one by one, starting with the Dreamer. He's the first one to be like out on David. He's like, this guy's whack. He's dangerous. I'm not sure we should be meddling with this. He's the first one to come around to that. Everybody else still sees a usage for David. They still have something they need from him. Right. So they're, so Jean Smart's character still needs him to try to bring her husband back. So she's not willing to admit it. But I think by the time you get to the final scene in the house, they're all coming around to crap. We should never have messed with this guy. We should never have brought him in. Even Sydney seems like she's starting to get afraid of him. Although I go back to my theory of maybe she was made up by him, because he does seem to at one point bring Lenny out of his mind and into the real world as a physical manifestation.
So I don't know that that's him
sister
doing it, though. I think that might be Lenny using David's powers to give himself a physical form, to bend reality, because Lenny at that point in time is in control. Even when he's out of David's body, or she's out of David's body at that point. Audrey Plaza, by the way, is perfect for this role. She's amazing as Lenny. I love her character. She's so dark and twisted. But, when she comes out, David is up against the wall, and his eyes are glazed over and white, and he's pretty much almost like foaming at the mouth, just sitting there twitching. Nobody's running the show now that she's out.
Yeah. Which is a scary thought.
Yeah.
All the action, all up to the very end, I really enjoyed that. The final scene was really dark, and you just don't, it's very unexpected. You don't know what's going to happen. And they're being stalked, of course, by the guy from D3, the other mutant. And so I was curious to see what would happen. I was kind of thinking, this guy's kind of been an ass throughout the entire series so far, and you kind of want to see him get his comeuppance. And I'm thinking to myself, he really doesn't want to go in that house, because he is messing with the wrong Indian. He's going to really find out what true power is like.
Yeah, so when he follows them out of the base, I was like, oh well, he's going to follow them straight back to their sanctuary and then lead the rest of these guys to it. But they didn't go straight there, and then all he had to do was kind of sit tight and wait for them to go back. But no, he had to go and get into the house. So
it's a little surprising because he was witness to what he did at D3. He was
right.
hiding somewhere, witnessing it all. You would think he'd be like, I don't want anything more to do with this guy.
Which I kind of wonder what his powers are, what his powers really are. It almost seems like he's projecting himself, although I don't know how true that is, given that Sydney was able to switch places with him. Maybe when he's projecting himself as physical, he's actually there, but then he can adjust the amount of physicality he has present so that when somebody's shooting at him, the bullets aren't actually hitting him. When the guys attacking the lighthouse in the last episode were shooting into the windows, he was just unfazed. And then whenever they trap them up in the top of the thing before Carrie jumps out the window and to go kick ass, our dream sculptor guy, he fires off a couple of rounds, looks at his gun like, what the hell's going on here? And then he keeps coming on before Sydney actually switches places with him. So yeah, I don't really know what his powers are.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see. Now, the one thing I will say about this episode, I didn't particularly care for the ending that much.
But
I think I told you before that
one-off dreamscape things.
I don't like watching any episode of any show that I watch where it's a dream episode, because I go back to the comedian who said, you know what, we don't need to hear about your dreams. If we were meant to hear about your dreams, they'd project up on the wall like a movie. I kind of feel that way about when I'm watching a show. I usually hate dream sequences or dream episodes. So likewise, this sort of thing of the fake world episode of going back to the loony bin, where they're now all trapped in his head. They're at the asylum and they're all patients. He brought everybody in there with him. I'm a little worried about next week's episode, because I saw that and I'm like, well,
so
this
a couple of thoughts on that one, right? One, and the first one, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily inside of his head. He's got the power to essentially warp reality. He could just actually put them there and put them in that role and have enough power over them to put them in the role where they think they should be there, or maybe they suspect they should be there, or they start to wonder whether they should be there. And then that does something else with the audience, in that you're wondering if they've ever been out of the asylum, right? It's not necessarily that that he's put them in this special prison, or that Lenny controlling him has built this prison for them. There's the possibility that they've all been patients there the whole time, and that's why David's been giving these people, pieces in, this drama that's unfolding in his head. He could be completely crazy. Sydney could be could be Legion for all we know. It brings up, and I don't know, maybe that takes away from it a little bit. It definitely wasn't my favorite ending, place to end up. But I liked the episode on a whole. They were doing weird things in the episode. I don't know if you noticed, just the soundscape for the entire episode was weird. Really, really weird. Especially the whole silent thing.
They do a good job of keeping the viewers on their heels, hitting us and assaulting us with sound and with visuals and things like that, so that we're, as puzzled and off balance as maybe he is, So it's
going
an interesting
into the house. Yeah, I keep stepping over you here, but going into the house, it was almost like a horror movie.
Yeah, and you've just witnessed all of his power. So, and I noticed that the dream guy was carrying his Tommy gun. He wasn't putting it down. So I'm like,
oh no,
aren't you supposed to be going to get a friend? Isn't that guy supposed to be on your team? But you got an awful tight grip on that Tommy gun. And then somebody opens fire with the gun at the very end, right before they go to the asylum. Is it the Dream Guy? Does he open fire on David with it?
No, so it's the guy who my son and I have been calling Mike TV, the guy with the swirly eye.
Okay.
So he's taken over the form of the telekinetic guy, the guy who was throwing boulders around in that first episode. Awesome.
I hope that doesn't mean that he's gone.
Well, so I don't think he's gone. I kind of wondered that at first too. But whenever they start going round table and showing all the faces in the asylum, both of them were there. So Mike TV as well as the telekinetic guy. So it doesn't seem like he's out. So maybe he took advantage of the silence in the house in either disabling him somehow or just leaving him in another room and taking his form. And so they're both in there using the same form.
Right.
To try and get in close to try and kill David. That was a little bit of a weird scene. Sydney, takes David in her arms and she shields him with her body. And then the bullets kind of slow down and she said, take me to the White Room. But one of the things that I noticed earlier, they were on the dock the first time that they go to the White Room. And they're not actually physically in the White Room.
Yeah, it's on her head. So how is she being protected from the bullets? That was my first thought when the bullets are coming and she's like, take me to the White Room. Like, that's not going to help you, baby. You're still taking a 45 round right in the back if you do that.
Right. So I wonder, maybe there are different levels of entering the White Room. And, the top level is the one they were just projecting mentally in there. But we know that he can project physically into places as well. Being able to push himself around or make pockets of reality and physically go there. So maybe that's what she was trying to get him to do, although it backfired and has Lenny, the psychologist, in session with the whole group.
With the psychologist from hell.
Right.
Literally. And that's where they left us with therapy session. It's now time for some therapy. And I guess that's where we're going to kick off next week's episode.
Right. Yeah, it was a couple of weird things in there with Lenny, kicking off there. Lenny in this one is going to be the psychologist, but in this particular episode, Lenny had two scenes in there that were kind of weirding me out. You had talked a little bit earlier about Lenny being Benny, and then just being seen as Lenny by David, or the possibility of that. And you've pointed out some evidence to the fact that that's how it works. But Lenny makes some comments about Sydney at one point in time, and then she starts kissing on David, and now I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm not sure, who's what, or if they're the same person, or if they're different people, or if they're fragments of his own mind, or if they're this parasite. The other thing, something that we maybe was hinted at, the husband of the older lady, I forget her name, went missing, like 30 years ago?
Yeah.
At one point in time, they do the math, and they said, 30 years ago when David was born, this parasite could have infected him then. What if the husband is actually the parasite?
A parasite that loves jazz, baby? I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't think so. But what do I know? I mean,
the show's all over the place, so you can't really ever lock anything down.
Yeah, it's. I was trying to think of when he was still in his ice cube, dancing. Apparently, holding onto the secret of HBO's Game of Thrones release date while he was in there, and David was out, and the fight scene was happening. After the fight scene, after David comes back out, did they ever show that the husband is still inside the ice cube? I don't know. There could be some connection there. Maybe the parasite was attached to him, and when he got trapped in the ether world, the parasite jumped to David. I don't
That
know.
was one of the theories my son had talked about as well. Oh.
Yeah, I said ether world, didn't
The bars are back. There we go.
The bars are back. Hire me, Hardy. Yeah, I've been watching them. They're mesmerizing. But that's all I got on Legion. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's about it. Yeah, I'm still really enjoying the show. This was one of my favorite episodes. This is the second episode for me that really just popped, and it felt like just a few minutes later, it was over, and I wanted more.
Oh, I can't remember. Did you say you watch Humans or not?
No.
Mm-hmm. You should go watch it. They had an episode this week. Every now and then I forget why I'm interested in the show, but they had an episode this week where they freed the mind of a new android, where she got self-aware, and you learn that they're not all good. She drowns somebody, just drowns him, and you're like, oh wow, that just took a dark turn. So it's kind of an interesting show. But I don't mean to mix the streams here, but I would strongly suggest maybe taking a look at that show. And of course, we can barely get Legion watched and The Expanse watched and all the other shows that we have on our plate. So
and the limited amount of time that I have, I think I'll stick to the couple that I'm watching.
Yeah.
Still enjoying Haven while I'm on the treadmill. Into the second season on that one.
I haven't finished the first season yet, but I'm trying to get back to it. We're so backed up on shows. I haven't even watched any of the Supergirls that have been out since the second half of the season. I only watch Supergirl or Legends of Tomorrow when there's a crossover event with Flash and Arrow where I have to watch them. Then I have to suddenly catch up.
Yeah, we're all caught up pretty much for the DC shows right now.
All right. Well,
let's wrap this up.
Next week, we could be spoiling some of Iron Fist.
We could be spoiling Iron Fist, and it's a good time too. It seems like most of the shows are on a 2-week break. I think the next show for most of the DC shows, at least, are the 21st, starting in the 21st.
Yeah. Yup. All right. Well, then that's all I got on Legion.
All right. So with that, I'm Mitch.
And I'm pretty sure I'm Todd, but watching Legion, I don't know. I could be somebody else.
All right. Thank you, and good night.